I didn't believe in ghosts. Not in the sheet over the head, moaning in the attic sense. But I do believe some objects hold on to things. Memories, moments. Maybe even something darker. I've handled enough to see patterns, to feel the way the air changes around them. Some things are just wrong in a way that can't be measured. That's why I collect them. Not for fear or thrill, but because I want to understand what the hell is out there. I want proof. Or maybe I just want to see how close I can get before something finally bites. That's what brought me to that shop. It didn't even have a name. Just a barely lit open sign hanging crooked in the window, flickering like it was trying to give up. The place was sandwiched between two boarded up buildings like it had survived an airstrike that no one else noticed. One door hinge looked busted, and the other creaked to life like a death rattle when I pushed it open. The stink hit me first. Mildew, nicotine, dust, and something sour beneath it all. Inside, it was a claustrophobic mess. Shelves overflowing with crap from every decade since the Depression. Broken toys, clocks frozen, entire families of porcelain dolls staring blankly from the corners. It was perfect. "Watch your step," came a voice from behind a leaning stack of VHS tapes. "I don't carry insurance for dumbasses." He emerged like he'd been grown in the back room. Short, wide, gold chains on a chest that hadn't seen a gym since Nixon, and a cigar clamped between yellow teeth. Sunglasses rested on his head like a crown, and he wore enough rings to sink in shallow water. He smirked at me like he already knew me. "Just looking," I said. "Sure. They all say that right before they buy the weirdest shit in the place." He wandered behind the counter, trailing cigar smoke in contempt. I ignored him and browsed. I've been in dozens of places like this. Half antique store, half haunted museum with just enough grind to feel authentic. Most of them are filled with junk, but the ones worth their salt, they have something hidden. You just have to wait for it to look back. And then I saw it. Hanging just behind the register, barely visible between a mounted deer head and a cracked chandelier, was a painting that made the rest of the room disappear. I didn't even realize I'd moved closer until my hands were on the counter. It was monstrous. A huge man, if you could call him that, sat nude on a throne made of skulls. His skin was pale greenish-gray, stretched taut over a warped, muscular frame. His posture was unsettling. One hand curled under his chin like he was mocking rodent's thinker, the other gripping the armrest with knuckles like boulders. His face was human-ish, but too long, too hollow. And his eyes, they didn't just meet yours, they held you. Beside the throne stood something else, an imp. Child-size, lean with goat-like legs and a grin that promised cruelty. In its tiny claws, it held a polished silver platter. On it rested a human head, eyes gouged out, mouth frozen in a perfect moment of agony. Over one shoulder, the imp carried a heavy burlap sack that sagged as if full. "Hell of a piece, right?" the shopkeeper asked, watching me through the haze of his smoke. "Knew it had you the second you walked in." I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. There was a pull in the image, like a gravity behind the paint that dragged at my stomach. I wasn't exactly scared. I was locked in. "Who painted this?" I finally asked. "Doesn't say. No signature. Picked it up in a storage auction about 10 years back. Poor bastard didn't even catalog half the unit. This thing was buried behind some old furniture, wrapped like someone didn't want it to see daylight again. Probably smart of them. Maybe, he said, taking a drag from his cigar. You want to hear the real story, though? Lay it on me. He leaned over the counter like he was about to tell me a dirty joke. It's had 4 homes in the past decade. Every time, same pattern. Guy of the house, dad, boyfriend, bachelor, doesn't matter. Ends up missing. No struggle, no signs of forced entry. Just gone. Every time I sell this thing, it ends up back here in a matter of time. I raised an eyebrow. You're serious? He nodded, blowing smoke sideways. Only thing left behind is a set of bloody footprints. Always leads straight to wherever the painting was hanging. I studied the canvas again. The imp seemed closer now, like it had shifted suddenly when I wasn't looking. The sack on its shoulder looked heavy, like it had weight beyond the frame. Cops never figured anything out. Cops don't know their asses from shadows. Why keep it? Why not burn it or lock it away? Not my job to make decisions for other people. I run a shop. People want to dance with the devil, then I'll provide the music, he said with a shrug. I looked back at the painting. My heart was thudding, but not with fear. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff and wanting to see what happens when you jump. How much? $5,000. No haggling, no returns, he said without hesitation. I didn't even blink. I pulled out an envelope from my coat pocket and counted off the bills. I had brought it for something else entirely. A ritual mirror in Akron I've been chasing for weeks. But this felt like something more. Goldwright, as he introduced himself while wrapping it in thick brown paper, didn't bother pretending to be surprised. He whistled low as he taped the edges shut. You know, he said, sliding the wrapped canvas across the counter. Most people who buy from me come back with questions, or they don't come back at all. I took the painting in both hands and nodded. Good thing I don't scare easy. He grinned through yellow teeth, lighting another cigar with the stub of the first. Let's hope that holds up. As I turned to leave, he called after me, smoke curling around his words. Hang it somewhere you don't sleep. I didn't answer him, but in my head, I was already deciding exactly where it was going to go. When I got home, I hung the painting in my home office, just above the fireplace. It felt right there. Not because it added any charm, gosh no, but because it needed to be somewhere I could watch it. Somewhere it could watch me, and I spent a lot of time in my office. The frame didn't match anything else in the room, and the subject matter was so far off from the bland abstract crap I usually kept on the walls that it practically shouted for attention. And that was the point. I didn't want it blending in. I wanted it loud and present, a focal point, a challenge. The first 2 nights were quiet. I sat in my chair each evening, studying the brushwork, the shadows, the way the imp's smile seemed painted with a hand that understood cruelty. The severed head on the platter had started to bother me less, which itself was probably more concerning than I wanted to admit. The monstrous man's eyes had that same pull they did in the store. Like if I stared too long, I'd forget how to blink. I thought about setting up a camera, but it felt premature. It was just paint. Intense, disturbing paint. But paint all the same. Night 3 was when the giggling started. It wasn't loud, just a tiny echo of laughter. A child trying not to be caught. I was brushing my teeth when I heard it the first time. I stopped mid-rinse, staring at the mirror like the sound might manifest behind me. Nothing. I told myself it was the neighbors, maybe someone's kid. I didn't bother checking the hallway. I didn't need to feed my imagination. But night 4 had happened again. This time closer, and this time I checked. I walked the halls of my house in silence, barefoot, holding my breath. The air felt still, charged. I turned corners like I expected something to be waiting just out of sight. There was nothing. No open doors, no shadows darting. Just me, standing in the middle of my house at 2:17 a.m., holding a kitchen knife like a moron. But then things started to move. At first, little things. My phone charger vanished from my nightstand, only to show up tangled around the kitchen faucet. My cereal boxes were turned backward in the cabinet. One morning, I found a banana inside my left shoe. Funny, right? If it weren't my house, I might have laughed. I started making excuses. Maybe I was more exhausted than I realized. Maybe I moved things and forgot. Maybe I started sleepwalking. But the giggling kept happening. Always late, always soft. And the more I ignored it, the more deliberate things became. One night I came home to find every light on in the house. And the painting, it was slightly tilted. Not a lot, just enough that I noticed. I fixed it, stared at it longer than I should have, then turned off the lights and went to bed. The next morning, I found all of my socks in the refrigerator. That was the tipping point. The joke had run its course. I grabbed a bag of flour from the pantry and spread it across the hallway floor that led to the office. It was something I'd done before when I suspected movement in other rooms. Simple, effective. You can't argue with footprints. And I heard the giggling again, closer now, like it was just on the other side of the door. I didn't move. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting my breaths. When I finally got the nerve to check the hall, I already knew what I was going to find. Tiny prints, not child-sized, smaller, sharp-toed. They stared at my bedroom door, looped in chaotic circles through the flour, and stopped dead in front of the fireplace. Right in front of the painting. I didn't sleep the rest of that night, obviously. I couldn't. I sat in the office until the sun came up, watching that grotesque little imp smile at me through layers of oil and time. It felt like he knew something I didn't. Like he was waiting for a punchline I hadn't caught up to yet. And things got worse, fast. I started seeing him, the imp, not just in my dreams or reflections, but in flashes. In the shimmer of the television when it was off, in the hallway mirror as I passed it, in the kitchen window at night, his tiny face pressed up to the glass like a grotesque kid waiting to be invited in. Once, I turned off the kitchen light and saw him outside, standing in the dark, still watching me. He didn't move, didn't smile, just tilted his head and stared. I bolted out of the back door with the bat, heart pounding, but there was nothing. The giggling came back louder. Like a child mid-prank. "You're fine when you're tired," I heard once, whispered right beside my ear, as I dozed off in the office chair. I jolted up, spinning, heart pounding, but I was alone. That night, I found muddy footprints on my pillow. I stopped answering calls. I let texts pile up. My sister's voicemails turned from friendly to frustrated to frightened. I didn't return them. I couldn't. What would I say? That a demon painting sent its little errand boy to psychologically ruin me? That he now whispered things like, "You taste different when you're scared, and I like how your hair falls when you panic"? No one would believe that. I wasn't sure I believed it. One night I woke up to the sound of something dragging across the floor. A sack, I thought. Something wet inside. I crept toward the sound and heard the imp giggle again, more drawn out this time, almost melodic.
"Come look, I made you something."
I reached the hallway and saw nothing. Just silence, but the smell, it smelled like old blood and hot metal, like something left in the sun too long. I installed cameras the next day, one in every room, one aimed right at the painting. The footage never caught anything clearly. One night it showed me in the office, standing stock still in front of the painting whispering to it, and another time, it showed the imp crawling across the ceiling, head twisted around completely backwards, giggling like a child on a swing. When I tried exporting the clips, they were corrupted. I tried talking to the imp directly. One night I sat cross-legged in front of the painting and whispered, "What do you want from me? Why me?" From behind the frame, I heard a voice like cracked glass, cheerful and cruel.
"Want? Nothing yet, but you'll soon fit."
I didn't know what that meant. I didn't want to know. The next morning, the painting had changed. The monstrous man's eyes were no longer focused outward. They shifted downward toward the imp. The imp's grin stretched wider than before. His claws looked more red. The sack was heavier now, swollen like it was full of meat. I started to believe it had always been changing, subtly, a little each day, and I just hadn't noticed. I avoided the mirrors in the house, afraid I might see the imp behind me. Once in the bathroom, I slipped and caught myself on the sink, only to look up and see his face right behind mine.
"Brush your teeth. Can't go in the sack with dirty breath."
I knocked the mirror off the wall and it shattered into 100 jagged lies. I tried burning the painting. I took it out to the yard, soaked it in lighter fluid, and struck a match. And nothing. It wouldn't burn. The match fizzled. I tried another and another, then a blowtorch, but nothing. I screamed and beat it with a crowbar until my arms gave out, and the pain didn't so much as scratch. That night, I found the imp sitting on my bed, holding something in his lap. It was a bundle of cloth. Bloody cloth, and he looked at me with glee.
"Guess what's inside?"
I didn't move.
"Oh, it's soft. Real soft. And it smells like your nightmares."
Then he was gone. Just like that. No sound, no flash, just gone. The indent slowly went back to normal where he sat. I touched the spot, still warm. Sometimes, now I hear him even when I'm not at home. In the car, at the grocery store.
"Buy the red apples. They bruise like skin."
I left my cart in the aisle and ran. One night, I woke up to find a single word scrawled across my bedroom wall in something thick and brownish red. Soon. I wiped it off with bleach, but it came back the next day. I stopped trying to understand it. I stopped fighting the spiral. But I kept asking questions, out loud in whispers, and sometimes the imp answered.
"You're ripening. He likes you. The sack is getting roomier. We're going to wear you."
That was the worst one of all. I should have run. I should have torched my house. I should have done anything but stay, but I didn't. I couldn't. I was enthralled to the painting. The breathing started 2 nights after the imp vanished from the foot of my bed. Heavy, slow, and it came from somewhere deep in the house. and every inhale sounded like it dragged through his throat too wide and too wet. At first I thought it was the furnace, but that couldn't be the case. A furnace doesn't exhale like it's savoring the air, and it doesn't pause mid-drag like it's listening for movement. Then the footsteps. Thick, deliberate thuds. They started down the hallway, my hallway, and always stopped just outside whatever room I was in. I never saw anything, not at first, but I could feel the weight of it through the floor. The painting began to change more quickly after that. The monstrous man wasn't sitting anymore, not exactly. His torso wasn't angled forward. One foot stretched toward the edge of the frame. His right arm extended, bent at the elbow now. His clawed hand hanging just over the edge like it could fall into my world if I blinked long enough. And the imp no longer looked up at him. He looked out at me. And the head on the silver plate had shifted. Its mouth was open now, and its lips, they started to look like mine. I tried to ignore it. But one morning I woke up with blood in my fingers and drag marks across the wood floor leading back toward the office. I checked the cameras, static. Every file from that night corrupted. And then I started hearing it speak. Not the imp, but the man. Low and guttural. The first word it ever said was my name, just once. I was in the bathroom, brushing my teeth with my eyes shut because I didn't trust mirrors, and from the hallway I heard it. Henry. I dropped the toothbrush. The sound of it hitting the tile felt like a gunshot. I didn't open the door for 2 hours. The second time it spoke, it said, "Come see." The voice was closer. It felt like it was inside the room. I screamed. I ran to the painting, punched the frame, but the wood wouldn't even splinter. My knuckles split open and bled across the canvas, and as the blood hit the imp's face, I swear he smiled wider. That night I locked every room, every window. I boarded the office shut. But the footsteps still came. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of my front door creaking open. I knew it had been locked. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, straining to hear. The breathing was closer. I heard the imp whisper,
"He's coming. Are you ready to see?"
I didn't move. Couldn't. My hands were shaking too violently to hold the knife steady. I just listened as those impossibly heavy footsteps crossed the floor closer and closer. The light flickered. My bedroom door handle turned and then stopped. I don't know how long I waited after that. Hours, maybe. But I finally got the courage to get up and open the door, and there were footprints on the tile, big ones. Not human. The imp no longer giggled, he gloated. One night he said,
"He's very proud of you. You're almost ripe."
And one night he said,
"Do you want to know what the sack is made from? It's skin."
I don't know what's happening anymore. I don't know if it's in my head. I don't know if I'm going insane. How cursed this thing is. Damn it, I should have never went in that shop. The final night. I heard the monstrous man breathing again, but it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from everywhere. I was curled up in the corner of the office with my back to the painting, knife in hand, and waited. The shadows stretched across the floor. They were crawling towards me. The room suddenly got cold. Earthless cold. I turned around and saw the painting faintly glowing in the dark. The monstrous man's arms were no longer outstretched. It was empty. His eyes, if they were his eyes, were pits now, full of movement. The imp was gone.
"It's time,"
a voice said. I turned. The imp stood in the doorway, sack slung casually over his shoulder like a paper boy. His grin was wider than I'd ever seen it. His eyes sparkled with excitement.
"He's waiting for you."
I tried to run. I made it as far as the hall before I tripped. No, not tripped. I was grabbed. My ankle twisted, wrenched sideways, and I screamed. The sack hit the floor behind me with a heavy, wet thud. I turned just in time to see the imp lunge. He didn't weigh much, but his claws tore into my arms as he dragged me backwards, laughing and hooting like a kid on a ride. I screamed, kicked, clawed at the floor, but the house was soft now. It gave way like flesh. My fingernails tore free and blood smeared the hardwood. I was pulled back into the office, where the painting was no longer a painting. It rippled like a veil, like a stone cast into a smooth pond. The monstrous man stepped through, not entirely, but enough. His hands reached forward, fingers like bone-wrapped cables. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The imp hauled me to the feet of the frame.
"He wants you in the sack now. It's your turn."
I fought like hell, bit his hand, tore at the sack, screamed until my throat gave out, but it didn't matter. The monstrous man reached out, and the room went black. For a second, I was falling. Then I was crawling. Then I was nowhere. I woke up on the stone. Red light flickered across the walls. I looked up and saw the throne. He was sitting there, the monstrous man, and beside him the imp. The sack at his feet twitched. The silver platter waited on the floor. The imp reached down and pulled back the cloth on the silver platter. My face stared up at me, eyes gone, mouth open in frozen terror. And finally, as I looked into the sack and saw horrors unimaginable and screams that I can never forget, I understood what the sack was for. The store hadn't changed. Same open sign, same smell of stale cigars and moldy upholstery, same cracked floors that stuck to your shoes when it rained. Goldwright sat behind the counter as always, chewing on a half-dead cigar and flipping through a dog-eared magazine that looked older than the cash register beside him. The imp walked into the store with a leisurely stroll, painting strapped along his back like a cross he was forced to carry. Although, he carried it with satisfaction, with glee. Goldwright looked to the imp and nodded. "That didn't take long," Goldwright commented. The imp laughed gleefully.
"Not too strong, this one, but oh, how he is enjoying his time. Much more than the last."
The imp walked behind Goldwright, put the painting on the wall behind him, jumped onto the counter, and with a sly and devilish wink, jumped into the painting. It was different now. The monstrous man was seated as before, one claw resting on the arm of the skull throne, but his other hand held something new. A fresh head on the silver platter. And the face. Oh, the face was unmistakable. Henry. The eyes were gone. The mouth was stretched wide into a permanent scream, twisted in pain and disbelief. The imp stood beside the throne, sack slung over his shoulder like a trophy hunter. But he wasn't looking at the monstrous man anymore. He wasn't looking at the viewer. He was looking slightly to the right, as if waiting. The bell above the door jingled. A new customer stepped inside and brushing the rain off his jacket, but Goldbright didn't look up.
"Take your time,"
he said, tapping ash onto the floor.
"Don't touch anything unless you're ready to pay for it."
The man drifted through the aisles, pausing in front of a cracked mirror, running his hand across a dented music box. Then he stopped. His eyes locked with the painting behind the counter. Goldbright finally looked up. He followed the man's gaze, and the corner of his mouth crawled into something that wasn't quite a smile.
"Ah, you've got a good eye,"
he said, voice low and gravel thick. He took a long drag from the cigar and exhaled.
"That one's special. Had a buyer disappear not too long ago. Real passionate collector."
The man didn't answer. Couldn't. The painting wouldn't let him. Goldbright leaned back in his creaking chair, folded his arms across his chest, and grinned beneath yellow teeth.
"Got your eye on that painting, boss?"